Welcome to Financially Speaking, brought to you by Buska Retirement Solutions and its affiliate firms. We offer retirement, tax, and legacy planning from a dedicated family-built team. Coming up, we'll dive into how trusts serve broader financial planning, not just legacy planning, how revocable and irrevocable trusts differ from planning and control. And we'll talk about a question many young adults are asking themselves these days. Should you move back home to save money? And now for our weekly question and answer segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. I'm with Cole Bruner and Michelle Sweet from Buska Retirement Solutions, diving into how trusts serve the broader financial planning, not just legacy planning. Thanks for joining us today, Michelle and Cole.
Of course.
Estate planning, always a fun topic, although some people don't always think it's fun because it's a little like we talked about, I don't want to say morbid, but an important part to make sure your family harmony stays in place.
Of course, yes.
So let's talk a little bit about types of trusts. Everybody hears the word wills and trusts all the time, or trusts and wills. What is the difference between a trust and a will? The basic difference.
Well, the basic difference is that if you just have a straight will, the chances of going through probate are higher than if you were to have a trust. With the trust, your chances of going through probate are less, depending on whether or not you fund your trust.
Right.
You have to add assets to your trust and have them become a trust asset. With a trust, once your loved one passes away, it's more private. It doesn't have to go through the legal process. Whereas with a will, you would have to go through a court supervised process, which opens it up to, the public. Mm-hmm. So if you want things to be kept more confidential as far as your estate and who's getting what, it's better to go with a trust than with a will.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I think the one that most people talk about from a trust standpoint is revocable or revocable, or however you want to pronounce it. What are the other ones out there that you have seen before? Other types of
the other types I've seen is revocable trust, and then there's the irrevocable trust, which it offers you asset protection. It offers you protection from creditors, and people often use it for long-term care planning. Sure. The whole, protecting my assets from Medicaid and that spending down rule. The other trust that I'm familiar with is like a special needs trust,
sure,
which allows your child with any disabilities or any person with a disability to be able to hold on to any of their government provided subsidies. Mm-hmm. But then again, so they don't lose those, they also have money for their care.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah. And I mean, with each type, there's pros, there's cons, there's things to be aware of. I think the biggest thing is understanding how they work and then working with a professional to try to determine which is going to be the best fit for you, because I think that, there can be a vast difference in flexibility with incorporating
Sure.
these types of trusts, as we had said, irrevocable. I mean, we can't revoke it. We can't get rid of that in the future if circumstances change.
You own it. Yeah.
Exactly. So you have to be aware of that. Also, vast difference in price of how much it costs to incorporate these types of estate planning documents.
The complexity of them and all that.
Absolutely. Yep. And you could be talking some pretty handsome dollar amounts for those more sophisticated trusts, like the irrevocable trusts and things like that. So you just want to make sure that you're looking at all of the possibilities and really determining, with the help of professionals, which makes the most sense for your personal circumstance.
So you guys offer estate planning here, obviously.
We do.
How does the trust estate planning, the trust itself, work with the financial side of managing assets, reducing taxes, the long-term financial strategy? How do those blend together?
Well, I think the biggest thing to be aware of is that certain accounts are going to be handled differently with respect to your estate plan. Like, for example, in most cases, it's not going to make sense for you to make your trust your beneficiary of like your IRA, as an example, because the trust could pay a higher tax rate than your individual beneficiaries. Let's say you're a married couple and you've got, let's say, 2 children, and those assets are going to be split equally between the 2 children. Well, the trust could potentially complicate their tax situation. It could limit some of their ability to be able to make their own decisions individually. So there's various different things that you have to be mindful of. And there's not necessarily one set of rules that applies to all estate planning documents. There's certain trusts that are drafted one way versus another. So there's a lot of things to be aware of in that regard that might dictate how you incorporate or fund that trust with your personal situation. If you're changing ownership of accounts or beneficiaries of accounts or all these different types of things, you have to really understand not only the benefit in doing that on the front end, but also potential implications on the back end of doing some of those things.
Okay, and is there a place in life where, I'm a certain age or a certain net worth or bracket that I should say, okay, I'm ready for a trust? Something like that. How does one know when they should start considering one?
Well, I think, if you have any type of real estate, any type of, financial accounts that would, benefit from being titled in the name of the trust is something you should look into. Mm-hmm. I don't think you really need a vast, asset limit to be in a trust. I mean, I've seen people with, moderate means go into a trust just because they do have some properties they have that they want to protect or, put in the name of the trust to avoid the probate process.
Yep.
Some people, all they want to do is avoid the probate process and make it an easy transition for their families.
Yeah, exactly. And I always, I have clients that ask me all the time, they're like, well, you have to be really wealthy to need a trust, That's definitely not the case.
Rockefeller.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you certainly don't need to be incredibly wealthy or super high net worth in order to potentially benefit from a trust. I mean, like Michelle just said, if you're just in a situation where maybe you own your home and you've got some various different accounts that could be titled in the name of the trust that might otherwise go through probate. All of your personal property, all of those different things are all going to play into the question of whether or not your assets will wind up in probate after you're gone. And so if you're just trying to make things simple and ensure that your privacy is protected, protecting your estate from other people making claim to certain things. Your second cousin comes crawling out of the woodwork during probate because they're claiming you borrowed them. They borrowed you $50,000 35 years ago, and now they're tying up your estate and all of that kind of stuff for months, possibly years, to battle those types of things out. And now your heirs are having to hire attorneys and battle things out in court. Exactly, exactly. So it protects your privacy. It can potentially, reduce the time that it takes to get access to some of those assets.
Okay. And I know that one of the major advantages to the trust is the control or flow of money. What types of situations do you see people put controls on how that money flows out?
Well, I see a lot of times if they have younger children, not minors, but let's say they're 18, 20, in their 20s in college, and they don't want them to get one lump sum of money because
mean of them.
Yeah. Imagine why.
I don't get it.
Because they probably don't have the experience to handle that type of money. Right. So they'll put
the wrong experience to handle that type of money.
That's right. So they'll put age limits on it. They get a percentage at certain ages. At 25, 30, and then they can put conditions on it. You have to complete a college education before you receive these funds. So there's different ways you can put different tags on the money before these younger kids, receive their inheritance.
Right. Yeah. Kind of controlling how the money works
Yes.
post-death.
For their own benefit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Very good. What does someone do if they want to look at talking about trusts? Is there a consultation you guys offer? What's the best way for them to?
Well, they would contact me and we would sit down and we would just go through, their assets and, just what they're looking for and what their objective is as far as in estate planning, and make sure that they have all the documents that, they feel are necessary in place. And we sit down with them and we walk them through it. And it's a real easy platform.
Yeah. Very easy.
And they just answer questions. And if it does become too complex, or if it's something that we can't do on that platform, we could certainly refer them out to an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very good. Very good. Let's dive into this a little bit deeper here. After a short break, we'll explore real-world trust use cases such as creditor protection, income management, and specific financial planning goals. So stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Do you have a plan for how your assets will be handled after you're gone? Without one, the state could end up making life's most important decisions for your family. Through our partnership with Estate Guru, we make estate planning process simple and affordable, offering wills, powers of attorney, and revocable trusts. On average, our service costs 70% less than the traditional estate attorney fees, and you may even qualify for free financial and healthcare power of attorneys. Call our office today to get started.
And now back to our weekly question and answer segment.
Before the break, we covered the flexibility that trusts offer, control, tax efficiency, and beneficiary management. We're going to dive a little bit deeper into trusts here. So we talked about revocable and irrevocable trusts. What are the big differences between the two?
Well, an irrevocable trust is the assets are being removed from your estate and putting it into the name of the trust, which you do lose control of those assets. Those assets are now assets of the trust, and they cannot technically be touched,
Right.
Because they're no longer in your name.
Right.
And, as we mentioned before, that's, for tax purposes, and that's for maybe long-term care planning.
Yep.
And so it's very difficult to, revoke that trust and make any changes.
Right.
Revocable trust, you don't have it. Oh, and with the irrevocable trust, you also have protection against creditors or divorce and stuff like that, because those assets are now not yours.
Yeah.
So a revocable trust, it's kind of, you have no credit protection. The assets are yours. You can move them around, do whatever you want with them, add them to the trust, take them out of the trust, but they're all still in your name. And it doesn't really provide any tax advantages with a revocable trust.
Got it. So it involves the control of it all.
Yeah, I think it boils down to control of the payout versus physically moving the assets out of your name.
Got it.
Like, I think
who
that's-
gets what.
Right.
And that goes for trust for assets, cash and prizes, cars,
Yep.
jewelry, or whatever, all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and so the control of spending, we talked a little bit about this before the break, but we're something where they're called a spendthrift, I believe it is. What's an example of how that works?
Well, with a spendthrift, it kind of works like it's a safeguard in the trust. So if your child has some issues and you don't want them to have all the money, it kind of protects it, and it lets them only get a share of the money at specific period of times in their life, so they don't just blow through the cash.
Right.
Got it.
It's kind of protecting your kids from themselves, potentially.
I can understand that. Well, from being one and having them.
Sure.
Yeah. So instead of if you had $1 million you're leaving behind,
Yeah.
you could say, I want them to have $50,000 a year, or what, $50,000 at these ages. You can control it like that.
Yes.
Okay. Very cool. How do trusts integrate with retirement accounts and annuities? You use the term fund the trust. What does that mean?
Well, I think in terms of funding the trust, it could mean a variety of different things. It could mean changing beneficiary designations. It could mean physically changing ownership of accounts, of whose name the account is in. Real estate, looking at potentially either quitclaim deeding a property to the trust's name or doing a transfer on death deed to the trust so that it bypasses probate and all of those different types of things. I think one of the common mistakes that we see people make is they go see an attorney, and the attorney gives them a sheet or a couple of sheets of paper that say, here's what you need to do now, right?
Yeah.
And that's the page that they never look at again.
Quick claim deed to my trust?
Correct. Yes, exactly. Changing beneficiaries, changing ownership of these accounts, doing this, doing that. And oftentimes the money that you spent on that trust was really not going to help you at all if you don't go through and take those additional steps to make those changes.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why, like, when we help clients develop trusts, we make sure that they're taking those steps, changing ownership, changing beneficiaries, doing the things that are recommended by the attorney, so that we can make sure that their trust is not only set up, but also funded, so it's actually going to give them benefit.
So the trust, if I'm hearing you correctly, has to either own the asset, or the money has to flow back into the asset almost like it's a person, for lack
Correct.
of better terms, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I do see how that could be confusing to somebody
And
because it is just a piece of paper at the end of the day. So it's kind of
It's a lot of pieces of paper.
it's a lot of pieces of paper, but it's kind of a counterintuitive to what you would assume
Right.
trust is. Almost feels like it's a box you got to put stuff in.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good way to explain it.
I often tell clients, anytime you pick up an asset, buy an asset, acquire an asset, or open a new brokerage account or whatever, you should think, should I fund this to my trust or should I make the trust my beneficiary?
Okay.
Even be it whether it's a vehicle, because vehicles now are quite expensive and they could hit probate.
Absolutely.
So, you pick up a new vehicle, you should think, well, I'm getting a new vehicle, I should probably just title it in the name of the trust. And then it's a trust asset. So anytime you pick up an asset or something like that, just remember you have the trust.
Yeah.
Right.
And remember, should this be an asset I title in the name of the trust?
Right. And the trust shouldn't be something that you get your big binder of and then you just shove on a shelf and never think about again.
There's my trust.
Exactly.
Doesn't
I've got
see
it.
my
I did
trust?
it. I did it 35 years ago. Haven't looked at it or thought about it since. But check. Right.
What are the costs and process look like? Like what does this thing
Well,
ballpark?
ballpark probably for a revocable, every attorney is going to be different, but it's probably between $1,200 all the way up to $5,000,
Okay.
just depending on the
Obviously more
complexity of the trust.
Yeah.
And then with the trust, you should probably revisit it every 5 to 8 years just to make sure nothing's changed. And, any beneficiaries changing or your successor trustee is no longer alive, you should kind of just revisit it and just make sure that everything in there is still the way you want it.
Yep.
Because grandchildren are born and people are divorced and, things will change.
Okay. And then what types of things does a person need to decide? What decisions does one need to make when they have a trust? Obviously you mentioned kids getting things, but like, do I have to decide who gets what at that point?
Yes, you do. You should have your beneficiaries, who you want as beneficiaries, is probably the first thing you need to know is where do you want your assets to go, be it an individual, an entity, charity.
Yep.
Just wherever you want your assets to go, you need to think about that. You also want to think about who your successor trustee is going to be. You want somebody that is going to be, he's going to be able to be trusted with your money because it entails a lot to administer your trust, and you want to make sure that person isn't going to take your money and run, and you want to make sure that he has an understanding of what needs to be done. So that's somebody you really want to put a lot of your confidence in. That's going to make sure your assets are distributed according to your wishes.
How you wanted it. Okay, good.
Absolutely.
And do most people that you run across, have they done estate planning, or have most people not done it? We open with kind of a joke. It's not the most fun discussion with people, but what do you see happening?
I see people up there in age, in their 70s and some even in their 80s. I had a phone call from a gentleman and he has nothing in place and he's concerned about where his assets are going to go.
Yeah.
So I think I saw one statistic where 60% of the people do not have an estate plan.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
there was definitely some statistics put out over the course of years. I think AARP was the most recent one that I saw. That was like 67%.
Really?
Of Americans don't have any estate planning documents in place, even a basic will, anything like that. So very, very common for people to kind of, delay or procrastinate, as we like to say, the estate planning component, but it is incredibly important.
Very good. Well, I appreciate you guys helping me with that. I know it's probably a tough thing to get people doing, but probably rewarding when they come out the other end of the process.
For sure.
Thank you much. Thank you for joining us. If you have any estate planning questions, call Buska Retirement Solutions to point you in the right direction, and we'll go from there. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.
At Buska, our goal is to streamline the retirement planning process to help you move towards a successful retirement with confidence and ease. Through our 3 companies, we provide a comprehensive approach to planning your future. We work closely with you to create a personalized, comprehensive retirement plan that reflects your unique goals and financial situation. Our team integrates investment management, income planning, tax strategies, estate planning, health insurance, and Medicare planning all under one roof. That means fewer appointments, less stress, and more clarity as you prepare for life's next chapter. Whether you're just starting to think about retirement or looking for a second opinion on your current plan, we're here to help you feel more confident about your financial future. Call us today at 715-355-4445 or visit retirewithbuska.com to schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation. Let's make retirement planning easier together.
And now our Financially Speaking weekly desk segment.
Welcome back to Financially Speaking. I'm Sue Buska from Buska Retirement Solutions, and joining me today is Logan Weller. So today we're going to be talking about a question many young adults are asking themselves these days. Should you move back home to save money?
This is a great question and a great topic, Sue. An Investopedia article notes housing costs are very high, which can make it difficult for young adults to afford rent on their own.
Well, that's so true, Logan, and it's why the share of young adults living with their parents has really increased from 53% in the 1990s to 57% today.
Whew, given that more than half of people in their late teens and 20s are living at home, is there really anything to discuss? It seems like there's a clear benefit for them.
Well, the issue is that there are trade-offs. If you're going to move back home, you may want to do a cost-benefit analysis to see whether the benefits outweigh the trade-offs.
All right, well, let's talk about the biggest benefit first. The Investopedia article I mentioned a few seconds ago quotes a young man who lives in Massachusetts, where the average cost of an apartment is $2,000 per month. By living at home, he saves $24,000 per year.
Wow, that's a healthy amount that can really add up quickly. And he could end up almost $100,000 in just 40 years.
That's exactly right, Sue. It's one of the ways in which living with mom or dad for a while can help you become more financially independent.
But that's if mom and dad don't charge you any rent.
Right? Good point. Living at home isn't always free, but it can be cheaper than living on your own.
Well, many parents bought houses when they were less expensive, so an adult child's share of the expenses would be probably much lower.
Yeah, and some parents are renters in expensive areas, and others expect their children to carry the whole financial load. In fact, 10% of adults living at home say it makes their financial situation worse. But there is an exception, not to the rule.
Right. Now, while living at home can help you save money, consider that it's not always good for your career.
That's a great point. If your parents live in an area that's far away from jobs in your field, it could hold you back.
Well, imagine wanting to work at a New York publishing house, but your parents live several states away and there are no other smaller publishers nearby.
And that's a great example, Sue. Another one would be wanting to work in tech, but mom and dad live in a long away from San Francisco and the Silicon Valley there.
Well, there are other trade-offs to living with parents. Your social life is a big one. Many young adults say living at home gets in the way of their independence, and this is especially true when it comes to dating.
I can imagine so. Dating while living with your parents can be a bit awkward, especially if the person you're going out with lives at home too.
Yeah, for some people who live with their parents, it can feel like the lack of independence stunts their growth, even if they typically get along with their parents.
I think it's just a reality that often the things that are good for us financially aren't always the best for us emotionally or mentally.
Right. But when you get your finances in order, once you've saved enough money by living at home, you can afford to do some of those things that are good for your heart and your mind.
Well said, Sue. If you are living at home and are feeling the strain of sacrificing independence, it may help to remind yourself that it is only temporary and that you're saving up for the kind of life that you want in the future.
That's right. And it could also help to remember that independence may mean paying a lot of money for a not so great apartment. And it could mean you're able to save less. Maybe you can't put as much cash in savings, or you can't save money in a retirement account. And on top of that, you may have a lower standard of living. Mom and dad's house doesn't seem so bad when you factor in those things.
It's very true. Foregoing a crappy apartment for a few years to lay the foundation of a solid retirement fund seems like a sensible strategy for me, or to me, but paying too much in rent, having to delay your savings for retirement can catch up with you later in life.
And it can mean sacrificing independence in your golden years. But the difference is it won't be a choice.
So, Sue, are we saying that if it makes financially sense for young adults to live with family, then should they do it?
Well, it really depends on your individual circumstances. I mean, we can't just blanket recommend that everyone should do this, but if you think carefully about the pros and the cons and about your individual family circumstances, I mean, you can determine whether living at home makes sense for you.
I think we're about out of time for this segment. Viewers, if you're wondering whether living with family could help you financially and want to talk through it, reach out to us at retirewithbuska.com or give us a call at 715-355-4445. We'll be right back with more Financially Speaking after this. If you're 59 and a half or have recently changed jobs, now might be the perfect time to consider a 401k rollover. Rolling over your old 401ks could simplify your finances and give you more control from investment options and costs to how and when you make withdrawals. A rollover could give you the opportunity to partner with a financial services professional and tailor your investments to your specific needs, not a company's group plan. Call our office today to schedule your complimentary consultation and see if a 401k rollover is right for you.
With recent market changes, it's understandable that some people are feeling a little anxious about their financial future. That's why now might be a perfect time to review your financial plan. A financial services professional is trained to help you stay focused on the facts, not emotions, when it comes to your strategy. Getting a second opinion today works to ensure your investments are properly positioned to weather market volatility and that you're not taking on more risk than you realize. Let's work to make sure your plan is ready for whatever comes next. Call us today to schedule a complimentary review with one of our financial professionals.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Financially Speaking. We're glad you were able to join us today, and we hope you learned some useful retirement tips along the way.
On today's show, we covered a number of important topics, and hopefully we did so in a manner that was easy for you to understand. This is the same way we communicate to our clients when we meet with them in person. Remember, with the help of the right financial services professional, you can create a quality retirement, and our team is here to help. Right now may be a great time to get a second opinion on your retirement plan. Call us at 715-355-4445 or go to our website, retirewithbuska.com, to continue your retirement education, catch up on previous episodes of our TV and radio show, or schedule your complimentary, no-obligation consultation.
If you have any questions or comments about today's show, call us at 715-355-4445 or feel free to send us an email at info@retirewithbuska.com. Join us next week at the same time and same place for another episode of Financially Speaking.